All right, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Liberty and Friends, which comes to you, of course, every Sunday at 8 p.m. here on the Big Daddy Liberty channel. My name is Usikhle Ngobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. I hope you guys have a warm beverage to keep you company tonight. Liberty and Friends is the one long format show that I have. It usually goes on for about 90 minutes to about 2 hours. So we probably won't have that much of a long show this evening. But as the name suggests, Liberty and Friends, I'm often not alone. I'm joined by the Friends panel, a revolving door of voices, analysts, economists, thinkers who are on the conservative, libertarian, classical liberal, and even anarchist spectrum, the very sort of voices you don't hear on mainstream media. So they help us unpack the news week that was. With that being said, where are my manners? Let me once again remind you that you are watching Liberty and Friends. If you're watching this broadcast on Facebook, X, or on YouTube, do me a favor, smash that like button. Hit that like button if you like this content. It really does help with spreading the show. And guys, as you're trickling in, just mention where you're watching from. It's always great to get the engagement up. If you can let me know where you're actually watching the show from. Good evening, welcome to it. And of course, if you are watching on YouTube in particular, then hey, do me an even bigger favor. Subscribe to the show. Help me reach my goal of 45,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm pretty sure I'm somewhere close to that number now. I think at last glance, it was somewhere around 44,700. And we're trying to grow those numbers. Welcome to it. My name is Usikhle Ngobese. This is Liberty and Friends. You can also find the Big Daddy Liberty channel and what we do and our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. Now, with that being said, how about we get into tonight's show? I must quickly put forward some apologies. Some of my guests could not make it tonight owing to power outages in parts of Gauteng. So that's put a slight damper on the usual full spectrum of panelists that we have on the show. But we're not, I'm not running the show alone. I will be joined by Umpiake Gamini, who of course is a voice who is very popular on this channel. Let me get him on screen. There he is right there. Let me just fix that. Umpiake, Baba, good evening.
Good evening to you, Sihle. It's great to be back here. Last time I was here, a close friend of mine who watches your show regularly said I've gotten bigger since last time he saw me. So
Well, there you go.
I know he's watching today. So yeah.
I was about to say, you're probably matching the channel then of Big Daddy Liberty. Welcome to it. With that being said, okay, we're going to get straight into tonight's topics because I think that they've really dominated the news week in a sense. And that, of course, is the first issue, which is Ramaphosa opening the 7th administration or opening parliament, if you will, also with an address to parliament. Now, I'm going to take a brief second here before we get into the details. I did find it a little bit on the weird side that it was the president opening parliament and not the speaker necessarily opening parliament. I would have thought with parliament opening and the separation of powers that the speaker, being the head of parliament, would have been the one delivering some address, telling us about how parliament will, I don't know, hold the executive accountable or anything. But nonetheless, Ramaphosa speaking at this particular opening. Before we get into details, let's take a step back and remind ourselves. Ramaphosa, of course, is now the president of a coalition government, in a sense, which they have dubbed the Government of National Unity. Now, I think the first place to begin is just to get your sense first of this GNU, its structure, its makeup, the personalities behind it, and what you think it may achieve going forward.
So the GNU, okay, in terms of the structure, it's the way cabinet is supposed to be governed. Well, okay, let's just rewind a little bit because before the GNU was announced, there was a lot of there was a lot of discussion about what kind of coalition government, what kind of government should be formed now that the ANC had fallen significantly below 50 and 45%. So a lot of liberals in the IRR and FMF and other liberal organizations suggested a confidence and supply. I know one of my close friends, Martin van Steren, was one of the first people to suggest that. So yeah, there was a lot of discussion about those things. So it seems like the DA disappointed a lot of people in choosing to go into government in the form of having ministers in government. Well, I was one of the people who supported them going into government, but I didn't. I supported them under the condition that, as Helen Zille said in 2019, that they would put tough conditions on the ANC. I expected that, they would get I didn't expect the ANC to capitulate on their big policies like BE, but I expected that the DA would be able to get agreement on labor reform, for example. So if we could get the labor reform, that they could get agreement on property rights, that the AWC would be ruled out, NHI would be ruled out, Bella Bill would be ruled out. We would get a lot of deregulation. So I expected things like that. I didn't expect they would get rid of BE, but I did expect some other things that could make a dent on unemployment, and of course, fighting corruption and all of that. So I thought it was also I thought it was also going to be interesting because Ramaphosa was now implicated himself in corruption with Pala Pala. So it was interesting how that was going to work. So the structure was going to, we were hoping that the structure would be something where the DA would have influence, or no, not just the DA, but all the liberals, because there are other liberal leaning organizations in the GNU. You have the IFP, which is liberal leaning as well. You have the Freedom Front Plus. Yeah, you have and Rise Mzansi, and like a bunch of other ones that are liberal leaning. So we were hoping that it would there would be some the liberal influence will show. But what seems to have happened is instead what's happened is that basically there's a continuation of the ANC's sixth administration. A lot of the policies, there isn't much new liberal policy if we're honest with ourselves. I know that the DA Twitter account was declaring victory, it's okay. The ANC has taken our policies, but it's very few. It's very minor stuff. It's well, yeah, we'll zero rate more stuff in VETs. We'll consider the makeup of the fuel price, things like that. And notice the language being used is will consider. It's not yeah, there are no firm commitments when it comes to the DA policies. The only firm commitments made by the government are two ANC policies. So it was interesting to see that as well. So all of those things, it's and also the personnel, like you said, it's only 12 opposition ministries, and out of those 12, two of them belong to the PA and the PAC. So well, those are not exactly liberal organizations. So you have so it's and considering that the DA got 20%, like half the ANC votes basically, but they have six ministries, whereas the ANC has more than 20. So that doesn't make sense. I mean, you would think that the DA would have at least 10, since because they got half the ANC votes. Things like that. Just it just keeps adding up. Policy, personnel, structure, like you said, and it says it really looks like what happened is the DA and other parties and other opposition parties are supporting an ANC government here. It doesn't look like a proper, coalition or GNU, if you want. It doesn't look like there's going to be any real power sharing at the moment. I mean, it could still change at the moment, but I mean, the state of the nation is supposed to set the tone for the next 5 years. And if the next 5 years is what was in the speech, then it doesn't look good. I mean, we'll see. I think that when they do the medium term strategic framework, which is now called the medium term plan, then we'll see what's going to be the substance of that. But it doesn't look good so far.
And perhaps that's the moral of the story. Oh, excuse me, that that Footy's Coca-Cola is coming back. This is not a paid endorsement, people. I'm taking a moment here just to mention Footy's, fantastic sugar-free option with actual decent sweeteners, not that nonsense aspartame and other crap. Again, that's not a paid endorsement. I'm just mentioning what I do drink.
Yeah, but
On
they
my
should pay you,
nature.
man. It's a natural feat. I'm just saying they should pay you.
But the background you're setting here, Biake, is actually very important. And there's a reason why I asked you to start here, because it's almost setting the tone, therefore, for the speech that was delivered by President Ramaphosa this week, which was not quite the State of the Nation address, but instead it was a opening of Parliament speech that is only done once every 5 years, basically at the end, or pardon me, at the beginning of a new term of government. And this one was meant to tell us what the seventh administration would do and yada, yada, yada. And as you're rightly pointing out, you would expect that a party like the DA, which really did get half of the votes that the ANC got, would hear much more of its influence in the direction of government, in the composition of government, and of course in the flavor of government direction. And we haven't really seen that, unfortunately. We've seen very superficial policy sort of nods by the president. And we'll get into some detail in a moment. But I think that overview you said was very important, because maybe that's where a lot of disappointment for some people may be. But I'm still of the view that it's early days, and with the DA now actually having that seat within government, maybe it will have a greater say at a cabinet level in terms of dissuading certain ideas. So we might not get DA policy per se, but it may dissuade certain areas. I don't know. I'm being sort of hypothetical here, but here's what I'll say. And just to answer the one question I had on screen from LL Entertainment on YouTube, yes, we are live. Welcome to it. Smash that like button, guys. I'm in conversation with Umpiake Igamini, and we're going to spend the next, let's call it hour or so, chatting about the news week that was. We look at Ramaphosa's speech, and this is the first question I want to pose to you. You know, let's begin here, because I'm not really going to go into the whole boring speech. I think there's certain policy areas that we've been talking about in PRK that we were looking out for, to hear what the direction now is, given the new dynamic. And as you'll remember, PRK, in the previous administration before the election, the ANC clearly sensed it was going to lose that election. They're not stupid. They saw the polling, they saw the data. Why am I saying this? Because on the one hand, Ramaphosa, as the then sixth administration president, was signing a whole bunch of bills. If you remember that, in the last sort of 2-3 weeks of that government, there was suddenly a flurry of bills being signed. Why? Because I think they recognized that they were going to lose this election, and in this current government would then have to negotiate everything with their new coalition partners. One such bill that was passed into law was the National Health Insurance Bill. Now, this bill is a bill that effectively, very briefly, does two things. It centralizes all control of healthcare under the government, and basically then decides where people can and cannot access healthcare. That's the first thing it does. It centralizes control, including, by the way, the private sector. It says the private sector is now under the direct control of government. It can and must, or rather it must, take patient X or whatever the case may be, and in the second instance, then also determines how much will be paid to facilities by taking over control of all funding of healthcare from the private sector. In other words, your medical aid and current government expenditure on health, and puts it into one pot called the NHI fund. And guess who controls that fund? Yes, that's right. The politicians, of course, and the political elites, the people who they'll decide who controls or oversees this particular fund. So those are the two areas of the NHI then bill and now law, which obviously saw massive, and I mean massive, pushback from the public, from the same public who are very aware of what government control looks like, i.e. ESCOM or any other such fully controlled government service. But despite that objection, despite that apprehension, PRK, Ramaphosa went ahead and signed the bill. Now, in this particular speech, two things came out. Effectively, him saying he's going to put the brakes on the NHI just to allow for consultation, but it doesn't change the fact that the NHI bill is now law.
Yes, the NHI bill is still law. I mean, it's not like the Bella bill, which still needs to be signed. This has been signed. It's law. So it's just about government deciding the pace at which they implement it, because they can still control that. And yeah, so the NHI bill is law. So I mean, committing to when I heard Helen Zille in a radio interview, she said they have two main red lines. The two main red lines they have is the NHI bill and the Bella bill. I assume like the other things like EWC are also red lines, but the main things that look like they are going to be passed, the NHI bill and the Bella bill. So if that is true, then you would expect that the Ramaphosa the president would say that it's not even up for discussion. We're not going to pursue NHI anymore. We're going to put this in the back burner because we lost the election. It's no longer in our hands. And in fact, there is evidence that one of the reasons the ANC ended up doing so badly, they were always going to fall below 50%. But if they had not signed the NHI bill, they might have done at least 45% or above 45%. There's some evidence I've read, like in polling evidence for some of the polling companies. So if that is true, you would think that they would say, okay, yeah, this is a red line for our biggest partner, which is the DA. In fact, the one part that they actually need to make this GNU work, which is this GNU work, which is the DA. So this is a red line for them. So let's put this aside. Let's can it. You would think they would say that, but no, they say that they are going to compromise. They are going to have more discussion, and it sounds like it's yeah, it doesn't it's not as emphatic as you would expect, given that this is a red line for the DA, and you would expect that it would be much more empathetic. So it's very worrying for me.
Absolutely. And maybe let's take a brief moment just to unpack some of the bad policy ideas that have been put forward. These particular two are the meat and potatoes, if you will. NHI, yeah, okay. There is an economic argument to be made around why it is a bad idea to give government the full control of healthcare. There's two arguments perhaps that I want you to sort of flesh out. The one is the removal of the individual's right to choose, because that's what NHI basically does. It says, no, instead of you, Babum Tembu or Meneer Groenewald or Mrs. I don't know, Naidu, instead of you choosing where and how you access healthcare, how much you allocate to your personal needs for healthcare, either through medical aid or maybe having your own savings to see a doctor, you don't make those decisions anymore. The government and politicians make that choice. Yeah, okay. Why is that morally wrong? And why should it even be legally questionable to do something like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So you are spot on. There are two main arguments against NHI. It's the moral argument, which you've just outlined well, which is to say it takes away choice from people. It forces you to, not only choice in terms of like because the NHI, the way it's built, is supposed to be just a way to finance healthcare for everyone. So it's not supposed to be like, take over, as in physically take over the infrastructure in the private sector. But the issue is that when it finances healthcare for everyone, it then directs you to certain institutions. So if, let's say, I used to travel 20 kilometers to go to a private hospital because my local public hospital is not good, as many are not. So I used to travel 20 kilometers, but now under NHI, I have to register um, with my local health institution, which is the local public hospital. And not only that, I can't just go to the public hospital. I have to be directed by a primary care provider, which is either a clinic or a doctor, before I can go to the NHI. And and it's still not clear whether you'll have to use, like, if there's a doctor nearby and there's a clinic nearby, are you forced to use the clinic, or can you use the doctor, things like that. But anyway, so I'm now forced to use the public hospital, whereas I would have chosen the private hospital before. Okay, even if okay, let's assume the public healthcare sector is the best in the world. I mean, they provide equal service, they provide equality the same as the private sector. Let's just assume that for a moment. Okay, in that case, I'm still my right to choose is still being taken away from me. I mean, even if it's just because I like the nurses in the private hospital, I should still be able to choose, just because I like that they maybe I get, like, they make me smile when I go there. Like, it should be just a fundamental right of mine that I can use my money in the way that I want and choose to go to the private option. But now that right is going to be taken away from me. I'll have to choose the hospital in the area that I'm registered in. So that's the first thing, and then the moral argument. The second problem, which is the economic argument, is that the government now will be paying for everyone's healthcare. So the government will have to negotiate. So it will no longer, the element of competition in the market will no longer operate. You won't have private healthcare groups competing among themselves. So everyone, like there'll only be one single payer. So it will become very inefficient. We've seen this in the UK, we've seen this in Canada, we've seen this in other places where they've chosen a similar model. It will become very inefficient because now what's going to happen is government will simply pay what they like the idea is that the government is going to make savings because they'll negotiate, but what's going to happen is they're going to underpay people that they're supposed to be paying more than they should, and then they're going to overpay people that they should be paying less than what they're paying. That's what happens with the absence of a market, because the market provides discipline because there's competition. Without that discipline of competition, it's going to be loose, it's going to be inefficient, and it's going to provide ultimately outcomes that no one likes.
You know, even as you're saying this, there's a third element here which has to be discussed when it comes to NHI. Besides the immoral nature of removing people's right to choose, there's also the notion that the NHI, which you've touched on, doesn't actually provide incentives for the public healthcare system to improve. There's nothing in the bill that actually says, because we're skeptical that people will just flood or then let me rephrase. There's nothing in the bill that actually says, you know what, we are aware as the drafters of this bill that people will seek what was the private facilities because of the nature of the public ones. Therefore, we're going to improve the quality of public ones by XYZ. There are no incentives for that. So the problem I have with this particular bill is that you are still consigning poor people to the same substandard system, but now you're actually removing the choice they had to build a little bit of savings, whatever they may be, and no matter how meager they may be, to see a private healthcare practitioner. Let me be precise and specific. One of the things you're seeing mushroom in townships, in rural areas, is private practice doctors who are GPs, who are setting up practices, and who even slowly over time are building almost private mini hospitals, private mini groups, if I can call it that, where maybe you might have a GP who then invites a psychologist, who invites a dentist, who invites you name it. Suddenly you have these small micro hospitals who 99% of who their clientele are poor individuals. And why? Because that doctor is able to, does have the incentives, pardon me, to keep his prices low in order to attract volume of customers that obviously make up his ability to be profitable. It's that system that we might see be broken up by people, by politicians invariably, who might be well-intentioned, right, in believing that they should open up access to education, to healthcare, but in reality, we'll be destroying a working system in pursuing a system they hope works. If that makes sense. And this is where my fear of NHI is. It's not the idea that we oppose universal healthcare. There are ways to provide universal healthcare. Yeah, okay. And this is where I wanted us to speak to that particular point. If we were to redraft an NHI from a classically liberal, libertarian, anarchist perspective, how would we have done it? Recognizing the fact that there are poor South Africans who might need help to access quality healthcare, but what would have been more ideal instead of giving government control? What would have been the alternative?
Okay, so some of the elements that you need to maintain competition. So you can't get rid of of competition like the NHI is doing. Another thing is you can't make government a single payer. You can't eliminate choice. So you can't eliminate competition. You can't eliminate choice, and you can't make government a single payer. So the best way to achieve all of these goals is to make everyone a payer for their own healthcare. So enable everyone to pay for their own healthcare, and then once they so everyone just literally give everyone money. Well, you don't want to give them money because money can can be spent in other places other than healthcare. So just to allocate money for healthcare, and then in the form of vouchers, which I know is an IRR proposal as well as an FMF proposal as well. So allow people give poor people healthcare vouchers so that they are able to buy their own healthcare. And the brilliance of this proposal is that you don't have to you don't have to spend more than what you're already spending. Take the current expenditure and just convert them to vouchers. And then you simply sell off the current public healthcare infrastructure. You sell it off to the private sector. Like no one loses because, like, the likes of Mediclinic and other private healthcare providers will buy the current hospitals, will hire some of the current healthcare staff. Of course, if it's inefficient, they'll fire a lot of them if it's if it's overstaffed or anything like that. But they might need to hire more in other cases. So let the private sector own the healthcare infrastructure and just give poor people vouchers, because poor people want to access private healthcare. They don't want. No one wants to be in the public in the public sector. Like no one, So that should be clear to everyone. So so just allow people to choose, and then don't spend don't punish the people who pay most of the taxes that they are able to buy private healthcare. So just give everyone the same opportunity to buy private healthcare.
Absolutely. It baffles the mind. And I think, even as I'm watching Ramaphosa say that, look, they're going to put the brakes on NHI in order to consult further, bring in the DA's views, bring in the private sector, blah, blah, blah. I would hope that NHI becomes shifted to this model. Obviously, I'm hoping against hope, because I know the nature of the ANC, the socialist nature of it, which is, more government control, more government spending, more government direction of economic activities, which is a shame because, as you said, there is an opportunity here for the state to play a role in providing healthcare to the poor, but not to provide that healthcare directly. And the healthcare voucher for me is an important one, where, as you said, Mpiaki, you take the current expenditure on healthcare and you literally say, you know what, instead of us spending this money as government to run these costly facilities, try and operate the system, which, we're doing so badly with bad outcomes, let's just take the money, break it up into vouchers, and give it to poor people primarily. I mean, you don't have to even give it to everybody. As if people don't need government help, you don't have to interfere in their lives. But of those poor people to which government has those poor people on a database, technically, if you look at social grant recipients, you can go down the line in terms of how government establishes who is poor. You can begin with those people and say, look, we're giving you X amount of what was the budget by way of a voucher. We've done the rough numbers. I think it's around 14 to 16,000 Rand per person, for that person to then purchase a medical aid of their choice. And you can bet your bottom dollar, Mpiak, you would have the private sector, the likes of your Discoveries, uh, ProfMed, whatever the case may be, creating medical aid packages that will suck up these vouchers because they want the business. Incentives suddenly work in the favor of everybody. So again, this is one of those policy areas which I think needs that attention. The other area which we were hoping a party like the DA would speak up now that they're in government is in opposition of the Bella Bill, this piece of legislation that saw Upanyaza Lesufi, the current premier of Gauteng, in a very unstable government here, but nonetheless, speaking in speaking in parliament at the debate after the president's speech, basically almost wagging the finger in the president's face and saying, President, you must sign this bill, he says, because as he put it, it equalizes education, gives one teacher to teach everybody, and of course removes English and Afrikaans as the main mediums of instruction and allows for all languages as a teaching medium, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but it's the top-down approach of it which is scary, and effectively gives more power to government officials in education, stripping those in the healthcare sector, let's call it, who are maybe doing things like homeschooling, private schooling, charter type schooling, puts that power into the hands of officials in government. Of course, you've seen massive pushback from this, including here from this channel, by the way. We spoke at one of these parliamentary participation sessions, and we made it quite clear. Bella is anti-parents, it is anti-South African, and it's pro-government. But nonetheless, we would expect some opposition to this bill, from the DA.
Yeah, they said it's a red line. And the new education minister, Siviwe Khwarube, who's from the DA, said that she's going to ask the president to send it back to parliament to make changes. But no, what is a little bit worrying for me is that with both the NHI and the Bella bill, the language that the DA is using is like language of reform and tweaking the bill and making sure it's constitutional and things like that. I mean, it's fundamentally speaking, that like the bill is seriously flawed. Even if the constitutional court says, okay, the bill in its current form is constitutional, I would still be unhappy with it. So I'm hoping that it goes. Like I'm hoping that they're just being political right now. Like they are trying to not spook the ANC or spook the ANC supporters, but that they actually understand the real, like, fundamental, substantial problems that we have with the bill, and focus on fixing those issues rather than making cosmetic reforms which make it pass constitutional muster without actually addressing the meat of the issues. So I'm hoping that they do that, because it's a real problem. Like you said, it's going to take away the little remaining power that school governing bodies have, that parents have. I mean, parents, like, it's going to be so intrusive for parents who want to homeschool their kids, having government inspectors come to your home to look at your home and see whether it's an appropriate environment. Like, just thinking about that, like, you having someone from the government coming to your home to inspect whether your home is an appropriate environment to educate kids, when government schools kill children in pit toilets. I mean, yeah, you just have to think about the ridiculousness of the whole thing, and who's going to, like, how is that even going to work? I mean, we have. I mean, like, if I can raise my child in my home, surely then it's there. My home is good enough to educate my child. Like, this is the place where they spend most of their time, like, outside of school already. So if they can spend most of the time outside of school in this place, why can't they get educated in this place? So I'm really, yeah, I'm really hoping that they address the substance of the Bella bill, because, like, it's really problematic. It's going to entrench government control over our kids. It's not about education. It's about entrenching government control over our kids.
Absolutely. Again, even as I'm listening to this, I'm just mindful of how the ANC is so fantastic at putting forward these massive, highfalutin ideas of government control, and as if government is all knowing and all seeing. Um, Whereas some of the most basic things are often not even done, man, at an education level or healthcare level or whatever the case may be. And as we're talking about education, I mean, something as basic as has government eradicated pit toilets, for example, at rural schools in this country? Why are children in this country still falling and dying in pit toilets? And yet you have a situation where we're talking about Bella bills. Are all teachers who are teaching our children, and in particular, poor Black kids in townships and rural areas, are they even qualified, man, to teach our children? Is this why we're seeing such poor outcomes when they then do those periodic assessments at grades 3, 6, and 9, where we're finding out that nearly 50% of our children can't read or count at grade level? These are the sort of things that you would think an administration would focus on first before it even starts tinkering with those things that do work: homeschooling, private schooling, and the like. Those things have never really had a problem in this country. That's not where the focus should have been. And yet here we are, a government that would rather advocate for more control to fuck things up, excuse my language, than actually fix things and then allocate people control of things that would benefit children even more. It is a weird place to be in. It's a weird sort of ideological outlook that we have to fight before we even have the policy discussions at those sort of levels. But again, let me move us on here, Mpiyake, only because I'm just keeping an eye on time. Welcome to It Is Liberty and Friends. We've just gone past the 34-minute mark of the show. Let's call it another 30 or 45 minutes left in the show as we look at the news week that was. We've just unpacked the president's speech where he set out his agenda over the next 5 years. We're sort of saying, hey, what can work, what won't work, what should be scrapped, what should remain. And really, we just had that first conversation. Who is this we that I'm referring to? Of course, I'm in conversation with Mpiyake Dlamini, who's coming from us from a very cold, likely part of KZN. But that is who we're in conversation with. Remember, you, dear viewer, are a part of the conversation. I will start putting your comments and questions up on screen, so please keep them coming in thick and fast. A reminder, please, guys, I know it sounds like I'm pestering you, but if you are watching this, whether on Facebook, YouTube or on X, smash that like button, please. Do me that solid favor, hit that like button. It costs you nothing, but it gets the engagement up. And of course, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 45,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And of course, find us at our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. Yeah, okay, I'm going to move us on to something else, which is perhaps a momish of note that has happened this week. And of course, I'm talking, of course, about a one Iqbal survey, the owner of the independent media group, one of these sort of larger newspaper groups in this country. It has a near 100-year, I think, heritage. So it used to be, and I say used to be because, anyway, I'll get into that. But it used to be a very trusted news source in this country until, of course, you now had a situation where under this new management of Iqbal Survey, who we call the brittle spirit on this channel, because goodness me, does he have a fragile ego, you now have a newspaper group that literally is hunting online anonymous accounts and is also issuing newspaper headlines such as the Tembisa 10 babies that no one has ever seen, but alleges that a government conspiracy kidnapped those children, a fall of a once great newspaper. But Biake, before I bring you in, let's actually look at exactly why I call IOL and Iqbal Survey the mumish this week, insofar as this story, where they held a whole press conference at the beginning, excuse me, at the beginning of this week to expose, as they said, who is behind the anonymous X account, that's formerly Twitter account, at Gulam MV. This is what they had to say about that.
The person behind this account is Mohammed Jacob Vauda. I hope I say the name correctly there. Mohammed Jacob Vauda. He is a 37-year-old male from Durban. Vauda is associated with the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He holds a PhD and is also known as a stand-up comedian. He is also a radio personality of some sort. By his own account, he has multiple personalities. I'm not sure what that means. We have gathered a body of evidence linking Vauda to activities that are not only harmful, but also contrary to the principles of democracy.
Wow. Okay. So there you have it, folks. A whole newspaper group that has multiple publications, from the Cape Times to the Mercury, to the Witness, to the Pretoria News, you name it, literally spending its resources to unmask, in inverted commas, who they believe is behind an anonymous X account or Twitter account. And why? Was this account breaking the law or inciting violence or going on racial tirades, etc., etc.? No. This account was having an online back and forth, an online tiff with the owner of this newspaper group, a one Iqbal Survey. And because of that, Iqbal Survey then holds this press conference with his newspaper groups to unmask this individual. Here's the problem. The individual who has unmasked has nothing to do with this account, doesn't even have Twitter, hasn't used it for a long time, and has now issued his own video saying, it's not me, and you've now placed my life, that's him speaking, at great risk. Biake, let me just play his response and then I'll come back to you.
This is very weird, but a lot of things have been circulating about me nationally, that I am some guy behind one Twitter account, and I am definitely not that guy. I don't even use Twitter. I haven't used Twitter for like 8 years or something like that. So it's false allegations. I have nothing to do with this. I don't get involved in any type of politics at all. yeah, I'm getting threats and my family is getting threats, and this is absolutely weird and ridiculous. I cannot believe that this was put in the media, and yeah, it's definitely false allegations. I don't even know anything about politics. I don't even know the people in politics, to be honest. I only know like the heads of the political parties and no one else. So for me, this is like the weirdest news and the most scariest thing that can ever happen. And I'm very fearful for my life. Honestly, I'm really scared. So if you can get this message out to as many people as possible, I really appreciate it, because honestly, I have nothing to do with this whole thing.
Now, Mpiake, as I come to you, and there's two things I want us to chew on when it comes to this. We'll get to the second thing, which involves Sisulu in a moment. But the first one here is the complete and utter breakdown of basic journalistic ethics at the Independent Media Group, where they go on this effectively just for to appease the fragile ego of Iqbal's survey, to appease this brittle spirit of a so-called billionaire in this country. A whole newspaper group made up of adults who should have a better sense in their head literally play along and then dox, as the word is online, this particular individual with seemingly very little evidence, despite their claim that, oh yeah, a wonderful investigation is launched and this is who we found. They've doxed this individual, exposed him to danger, and as I said, no journalistic ethics, because you would have expected the newspaper group to give this man who they're naming as being behind this account the right to reply. Clearly, they didn't do that when he had to do a video like this himself.
No, they definitely didn't do that. Yeah, they didn't do that. And you would think that if they had done that, they would have known that within a few minutes that they have the wrong guy. So that's point number one. But I'm glad that he's now suing them. Also, it's just that it's amazing that a whole media group like is serving the personal interest of one man. I mean, people people who support the likes of Iqbal Serve, like they always complain about people like Rupert and using their private influence, to fight fictional battles. But that's literally what Serve does all the time. And he never gets called out for the same people who claim that the likes of with no evidence, who claim that the likes of Rupert do that, even though there's no evidence to that. You've never seen Johan Rupert being pissed off that, some you could getting Nespas, which owns the group, which owns News 24, getting like all the editors of News 24 to come and dox some of these leftist accounts that always attack him, like on Twitter. You've never seen him do anything like that. But that's what Iqbal is doing now. And you are right to call him a brittle spirit. The entire thing is ridiculous. If not for it would be fun if not for the consequences that have been suffered by this innocent man. But otherwise, the entire thing is ridiculous. I mean, he's clearly abusing his power here, and I hope the courts really slap him down for what he's done here, because he's gone far beyond the pale of what should be allowed by by it's just so wrong what he's done here. And so, and people still support him, which is amazing also.
Which, again, you're right. It amazes me. It stupefies me, because the real story here, and we'll get to it, links to the second bit I said we'll get to, is this is the abuse of the powerful in society, aiming that power, abusing that power to go after the individual in this country, the lowest, if you will, of us in society. Whether that power resides in the state, in other words, a politician abusing that state institutions to do something like this, or the rich abusing their institutions in order to go after, silence individuals, to go after their individual rights. Why? Because they maybe had their feelings hurt. Iqbal had his little feelings hurt. He's like a peppermint crisp. He just dissolved and crumbled because of a mean tweet from @Gulam MV. You have a situation here where that's the real issue at play here. It's the elites of society going after those of us effectively who are the individuals in society. And let me take it a step further as to why I'm making this link. Because at that same press conference, in tow, not only were the editors of various publications at Independent and, of course, Iqbal Survey himself occupying a seat in that same press conference watching this shenanigans play out, but they actually had a former minister, an ANC politician, also give testimony as to how this at Gulam MV hurt her feelings. And who is this politician? Well, it's who I call the ANC's Cruella de Vil. And that's Ulindiwe Sisulu. Let me play a very quick clip of her giving testimony and the startling admission she makes in Piake during this testimony that as a former head or that is political head of intelligence services in this country, she just casually says, "Oh, we bugged everybody," she says. But let's just watch what Cruella de Vil, aka Ulindiwe Sisulu, had to say.
Of this Gulam. And for some time, we tried to track Gulam down, and we found that the person who was fronting for Gulam was in the presidency and a woman dealing with communication. We didn't get any further than that. And I regretted that our media had got to the point where it is now. I was the first Minister of Intelligence in this country. The previous one had been Joe Nhlanhla, and he passed away prematurely. So we were responsible for ensuring that the integrity of information, of individuals' information, is dealt with. We had very regular meetings with the media, and we ourselves were exposed to a lot of information. I mean, we bugged everybody, basically. But there was an essential element in everybody who worked in intelligence. What they know, they cannot repeat. And even if a journalist were to get to them, they were not allowed to. So we had this ethical basis in intelligence to make sure that we can drive a society that is based on ethics. However, I found when I was personally attacked, and it was at the time when I stood as prospective president of the ANC, because I have every right, as everybody has, to stand if they felt like that. I was born in the ANC, and I thought, well, I'm old enough now to take a senior position. And Gulam did not let go. We tried to trace Gulam, and we were, as I indicated, stuck with this particular woman. And we thought, but how does this woman get so evil, get so petty, get so nasty?
Now, yeah, okay, you know, as I look to taper off this part of the conversation, there's three things I want us to chew on in terms of what we just heard from Cruella de Vil. There, number one, immediately, the first thing she says is, "Oh, as intelligence minister, we actually tried to track down this at Gulam MV account." Again, two sides of the same coin, where on the one hand, as I said, it's a powerful, rich individual using a private organization to do this. On this side of the coin, it's a powerful political individual using state institutions to try and find out who this person is. Oh, excuse me. Oh, yikes. If these two had just spoken, immediately there are contradictions here. Here's Ulindi was saying, "Oh, we found out there's a woman in the presidency." That literally defies what the IOL grouping had just said, that it's a guy who's a UKZN lecturer, etc., etc. That's the first mumish. The second mumish, which I want us to chew on, is the casual admission. "Oh no, we bugged everybody," she says. Can we just quickly touch on these two areas, Mpiak, and I'll get to the third?
Yeah, no, she's. I think she's obviously lying. We don't know about how much of it she's lying. I think I would guess that she's lying about they did an investigation on Gulam, because I mean, like, the Gulam Twitter account didn't exist when she was intelligence minister. First of all, and IOL is saying it's a guy, and she's saying it's a woman in the presidency. I mean, yeah, that's. But yeah, the serious bit is the part where she says they backed everyone. It needs to be investigated. At the minimum, the Inspector General of Intelligence needs to investigate that. I would hope also the public protector as well can start investigating it, because the Inspector General of Intelligence, even though he has the power to invest, like it's his area to investigate those things, or it's their area to investigate this. The problem with the Inspector General is that they can keep their reports secret. So I would rather have the public protector investigating, because their reports have to be public. But no, the opposition can't let this go, and it's just a pity that so much of the opposition is now in government. But like the rest of it that is not in government should push for this. Like, I mean, during question time for the Minister of Intelligence, they should be asking these questions. It's like, well, intelligence is under the president now. So during question time for the president, they should be asking these questions. It's yeah. So why? Like, how true is this? Like, I mean, they have to answer this. How true is this? That there was this attempt. Like, what does backing everyone means? Were they backing everyone? Like, did they get other warrants for those wiretaps or whatever it was? Yeah, Doctor, we need to know, because this has you can't play with something like this. And this is a former intelligence minister. And I wanted to go back to your other point about like the powerful in society abusing
Go
their
ahead.
power. But then, isn't it interesting that it's most of the time? I mean, I won't say all the time, but most of the time, the powerful in society who abuse their power is not people from the private sector. I mean,
Mm.
okay, you have the former minister in England, Sisulu, but you also have Iqbal Sev himself. Iqbal is a creation of like the state. He was
Yep.
uh, he was funded by the state to buy the independent group.
Mm. Beck, we're losing you there. Your connection is freezing.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that Iqbal is a creation of the state. He's not a private party per se, because he was funded by the PIC, which is owned by the state. He was funded by trade unions like SAG2, which are in alliance with the ANC. So he's not really like so. Most of the time, the people, the powerful who abuse their power come from the state. It's hardly ever the private sector. It's hardly ever people like Elon Musk or Johan Rupert, or it's almost always the people who either come from the public sector or who are funded by the public sector.
Absolutely. I mean, even as you're saying this, that last element of the story, which I wanted us to touch on, really, again, stemming from what Ulindi Sisulu talks about there, almost crowning it by saying, oh, well, we ran a government defined by ethics and ethical considerations, after literally just saying we bugged everybody, was insanely laughable to me. I mean, I found it hilarious at the time, but also deeply, it's sad, man, because you have people here who actually don't know what they're doing to a large extent, but even in their ignorance are willing to forge ahead, full steam ahead, and then mask their blunders, mask the mumish by saying, oh, we're doing this in the name of ethical considerations, as Ulindiwe says. But then there's also the other side of the coin here, of the independent group realizing that they pulled a mumish, a blunder, a fumble of notes here, and realizing now, as you can see on screen there, apparently the incorrectly doxed individual here, saying with a law firm behind him, thank God he got a law firm to assist him pro bono, that they're going to sue the independent media group. Suddenly, independent backtracks on these claims that it's this individual. They quietly remove the original video of the press conference, and they start now saying, well, it was a technical error that saw us name this individual, in a weak, mealy-mouthed apology that still doubled down on their campaign to quote unquote expose this Gulam account. Watch.
Our investigations identified two individuals linked to the Ghulam MV Twitter account, both named Mohammed Vauda. However, during the press conference, a technical error occurred in that the wrong profile was shared with our content teams and the public. This error resulted in the incorrect identification of a UKZN lecturer and comedian being identified as the person behind the account. For this error, we unreservedly apologize to Mohammed Yaqub Vauda, who was mistakenly identified. As Chief Executive Officer of the IOL platform, I will be taking concrete steps to ensure that such an oversight does not occur again. Both independent media and IOL deeply regret the error. As responsible media outlets, we have taken the necessary steps to correct the information provided and published. I have also attempted to reach out to Mohammed Yaqub Vau.
First of all, before I remove this from screen, what the hell is this? Like, just look at these two individuals. This is something out of the Adams family or some shit like that. It's scary as fuck. Like, what the hell are we looking at here? Uh, but okay, fine. Jokes aside, Sikhe. You literally have a situation here where this is where the courts come in very handy, is to protect the rights of individuals in situations like these, allow them the opportunity to, quote unquote, fight back against the powerful in society, give them a leg up. It was clearly the threat of a lawsuit that saw the independent group likely now issue this weak and mealy-mouthed apology. By the way, I call it weak and mealy-mouthed because, I'm showing you just a snippet of it. This 1 minute snippet was in a 5 minute long video, and it was buried in the middle of the video. The rest was them doubling down on this campaign to go after at Gulam MV. Now, they've since named another individual now, another Muhammad Vauda, who they now seem certain that this is the guy. But Mpiake, as we wrap up, here's the problem I still have with this. Number one, why does it matter? Why does it matter? This individual hasn't broken any laws. He isn't someone who is maybe using the account to break the law. He isn't inciting violence of any nature using this particular account. If anything, what he's using this account to do is using his freedom of speech, guaranteed constitutional right to express himself freely, to go after politicians he or she may not like as an anonymous account.
Yeah.
Why does this even matter?
No, like what AOL is doing here is anti-journalism. They are going after someone who is powerless because he's targeting someone who is powerful, who is Iqbal, and the politicians like Jacob Zuma, Floyd Shivambu. So it's anti-journalism in that sense. So I hope.
Yeah, your line is freezing.
Sorry, my internet connection keeps dropping out. But I was saying that they are going after this powerless individual, and luckily he has a lawyer now who can stand for him. So I hope this second guy as well sues them as well for doxing him, even if he is the guy, because what they're doing is really deeply unethical, and they could expose him to serious threats and violence. They can make his life hell. So I hope he sues them as well. If he doesn't sue them, I hope he takes them to the media regulator. So at least at the very least he must do that and to account for this.
Well, I mean, even as you're saying that last point, because I can see your line is deteriorating, but I just want to end off here. It almost speaks to the fall of the independent media group, because the independent media group has removed themselves from the press ombudsman. They actually removed themselves from that body that's meant to hold the traditional media to a higher ethical standard, a higher account, and we can see the proceeds of that to a large extent. As I've said before, I don't mind the press self-regulating. That's perfectly fine in my book. But it's when they do things like these and they don't even want to self-regulate, it's when you're starting to see these abuses of the system. Okay, I can see your line is deteriorating here. Let me jump perhaps to our last issue for the evening. And it's a bit of a fun one for me, but because there's not much that's happened, but it's something we're going to keep an eye on. Jacob Zuma this week, finally having his first, let's call it salvo with the ANC. The ANC, of course, as you'll remember, having threatened before the election that it's going to discipline its party member and former president of its organization, a one Jacob Zuma, who now heads up a completely different political party, namely the Umkhonto Wesizwe party. Finally, that particular disciplinary hearing kicking off, and in that hearing, we got a sense, Mpiake, of where things might head in terms of the arguments. Obviously, I must quickly say this. Nothing much has happened, but we except to have certain dates being set out for the hearing. Now, just give me a moment, Mpiake, as I put a article up here. And as I'm doing that, a reminder to my viewers, please, guys, hit that like button, please. We are in the final segment of the show. As I put this on screen. But the question at hand here, Mpiake, which I'm going to throw to you before I put this article on screen, just your forecast of things. Has the relationship between Jacob Zuma and the ANC deteriorated to the point where is it reasonable for us to expect him to be expelled rather, from the party?
I mean, Julius Malema was expelled for much less. So yeah, if they could expel Julius, they definitely need to expel Jacob Zuma. I mean, he started a party which not only competed against the ANC, but actually led to them losing power in KZN and like actually dropped down their average to much lower than it would have otherwise. So they really have to get. If it's a self-respecting party, they have to get rid of him. So they have to find a way to get rid of him, no matter what. So unless he like they can like unless they negotiate some political settlement, which I don't see how at the moment because he seems to want to get rid of the ANC leader, which is Cyril Ramaphosa. But if other than that, they have to get rid of him. There's no excuse. You can't keep someone who he's clearly violated the ANC constitution. Like you can't start another party while you're a member of the ANC. It's really, I mean, yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Sorry, let me just unmute myself here. Even as you're saying that, let me just put that article up online. Oh, there's so many ads. Sorry, just bear with me, please. Like, the moment I try and put it on, just ads keep popping up. Here we go. There it is there on screen. Let me just remove this ad again. ANC presses on with disciplinary process against Jacob Zuma. Zuma, of course, was charged with misconduct for publicly stating he intended to vote for the rival party, not just vote for it, but lead it. MK party in this May election. Now, the article here had said the ANC will go on with its plan to discipline former President Jacob Zuma, despite threats that he would take the party to court should it hold an in-person. He would take the party to court, should it hold an in-person meeting determining his fate. If the party's disciplinary committee, that's NDC, finds against Zuma, he would be the first president of the ANC effectively to be expelled. Now, Zuma's allies, the one Ace Mahashule, was the first Secretary General to receive the same fate. This is the quote I wanted to get to. Now, the ANC's acting national spokesperson, Zuko Ojimpi, had said that the disciplinary proceedings against the ANC veteran would continue as scheduled. Now, as he's quoted here, he says the interactions of the NDC, that's the National Disciplinary Committee, and people appearing before them are confidential as far as we're aware. The NDC hearing continues as scheduled and no indication of changes has been communicated to head office. A verdict will be announced only when the committee has received and considered all representations. We cannot know when that will be. It depends on the extent of the deliberations and the matters under consideration. Excuse me. And this is the part that I found interesting here, and I just want to paraphrase and bring it to our conversation. Though Zuma is the official leader of the MK party, he hasn't actually resigned from the ANC. And this is where the arguments that it seems he's going to put forward in his disciplinary hearing will resound around. It seems to be, Mpiake, that Zuma is going to make quite a few arguments. The one argument is he's going to relate MK party to what the SACP, or the South African Communist Party, is to the ANC. So he may make arguments to say, no, actually, I'm still an ANC member, even though I lead MK Party. And in fact, it shouldn't be a problem that I lead MK Party or I am a member of the MK Party, because there are people, he'll argue, who are leaders of the SACP, that's the Communist Party, but who are still part and parcel of the ANC. Do you think an argument like that in PIK will fly?
Well, there's one big difference with the SACP. The SACP is in an alliance with the ANC. So if they, unless the MK, like what I said, like about the political settlement, unless he can somehow maneuver the MK and ANC to get into some sort of alliance, there's no way that argument will fly. So I don't think that argument would stand. So he needs to, really, he'll lose if that's his only argument. He needs to bring a better argument.
I find it interesting. As I said, we'll just take 2 minutes on this, because really it's the hearing which we'll probably talk about next weekend, and the outcomes likely when they do come out. For me, I just wanted to get a sense of what we're hearing and seeing so far, what the arguments will likely be from Zuma, which are hilarious, to say the least, and how politically in PIK, Zuma, because he's a showman, he will use this to his advantage. You remember, initially, one of the reasons he said, no, I don't want to appear at this DC unless it's in person, he said, is because you can imagine he wanted to have massive crowds outside of Lutuli House of MK members supporting him. This is a man who's quite politically sharp. He understands the value of reading the room and exploiting the moment. And he will use this moment as a launch pad, if you will, to siphoning even more support from the ANC. Because if there's one thing that can be said about Zuma, but can't be said about Umalema, is that Zuma actually, when he will be expelled, is likely going to take more support away from the ANC, as he already has done, if you look at the election results of this past election.
Yeah, true. Especially from KZN. So yes, that's all true. I have nothing to dispute there. And so that the ANC has to be very careful how they manage the whole thing. I think that's why they decided to do it after the election instead of doing it before the election, just to try and limit the damage. But still, I mean, you can only limit the damage so much. And you know that Zuma is going to use it to maximum effect. I think what he's doing really is trying to maneuver the ANC conference in 2027 to be favorable to him. Like the entire thing with MK, I think he doesn't really have his heart set on MK based on how things are happening at MK. Like I don't think he's really taking it as seriously as you would expect. So I think he's still hoping to take over the ANC somehow. So he's just using MK as a way to push the ANC to the outcomes that he wants. So I think that's what he's hoping for. He's hoping to bring back the MK into the ANC, but under his own terms, under his terms.
Well, we're going to have to see how this plays out, and maybe that is where we'll end it tonight. Mpiake Gamini, thank you, Baba, for your time. As I always do, at the end of every show, I give you the final word, and of course, how people can find you on social media if you want to be found, or where people can find your writings and the like.
So thanks, Sinclair. Thank you for having me. And yeah, final thoughts is let's hope we see something positive from the GNU. Let's hope that we can, like what we need to do, which I think is what Phil Craig from the Cape Independence Movement said, is that we need to hold them to like measurable metrics. Like we need to say, okay, we need to see economic growth looking like this. We need to see unemployment looking like this after 5 years for us to say the GNU worked or didn't work, whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. So I think everyone should take that approach. And then as for everyone can find me, they can find me on Twitter. It's at MU Lockdown. Like they can find me on MU Lockdown. And also on the website for African Free Trade and Defense Society has my latest articles. It's after DEFSOC.Africa. And then you can find my writing on there.
Absolutely. We'll try and link that in the descriptor. I didn't link the website. Then I think I'll try and do exactly that. That is Mpiake Gamini, who of course is an analyst and a contributor here on the show. And again, we'll put all his details in the descriptors of this video. Thank you to Mpiake. And thank you, dear viewer, for watching tonight's broadcast. Let me know what you think about some of the issues that we unpacked here tonight. Do you agree? Do you disagree? as I said, it's been a very interesting week, and there are some things that we're going to keep an eye out on. And effectively, as I said, there's some things we're going to keep an eye on because they're going to have implications going forward. One of those things is really the 7th administration of the GNU. I personally, and this is where people will probably disagree with me, and that's fine. I personally am holding out a little bit of hope insofar as a gradualist movement towards reform. I don't think we're going to see wholesale shifts and changes that we like. I'm not that naive, but I do think we're going to see some forms of reform as the ANC really wakes up and smells the coffee that it's not in charge. Now, it may have won round one of the battle insofar as having numerous a disproportionate amount of government cabinet posts given its result. But going forward, it's going to have to realize that it needs the opposition parties that are in coalition with it if it wants to pass anything. And some of those things that it must pass are actual good ideas and good reform agendas. And this is where the DA, I think, has to shine. And parties like the PA and the IFP have to shine and get their voice out on it, because that's ultimately what South Africans did vote for. And the fact that we have loud lefty parties on the cold periphery complaining and barking from the outside in, I don't personally mind that either. Let the commies stay outside. With that being said, guys, thanks for watching as always. Thank you to all of you who are viewers tonight. I appreciated all your comments. I'm going to put up Umpiake's details in the descriptor of this video. And yeah, that's where I'll end it. Guys, remember, if you're watching this on Facebook, X, or on YouTube, guys, do me a favor, hit that like button, please. Smash that like button. It really does get the engagement up. Drop some questions. I always take about 20-30 minutes to read comments and questions afterwards, so please leave that in the comment section. And of course, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Help me reach my goal, please, of 45,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and find us at our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. That being said, as I like to say at the end of every broadcast, never trust a commie.